Sirella told herself that she would live, not only for herself but for the child she carried. Her people had called her foolish, but she did not see it that way. To her, this child was a gift. Perhaps it was late, perhaps her body was weaker than it had once been, but the spark of life within her felt brighter than any star. She pressed her hand against her stomach, whispering to the unborn little one, "You are not shame. You are hope." The station gave her little comfort. She explored its long, empty halls, finding broken panels and wires that had melted long ago. Some rooms had no air at all, sealed off by heavy doors. In other places, she found forgotten crates of tools, but she did not know how to use many of them. She came from a world of tradition and spoken wisdom, not machines and wires. Still, she learned slowly. She forced herself to study the way the systems connected, the way the power lines hummed, the way the machines spoke with their blinking lights. Each day was hard. The food supply was limited, and she learned to stretch it out. The water recycler sometimes failed, and she spent long hours trying to fix it with her clumsy hands. The loneliness was worse than the hunger. There was no voice but her own, no touch but the cold steel of the walls. Yet even in that silence, she refused to give up. Every night, as the station drifted in its endless path around the star, Sirella sat by the window. The dying star glowed red and heavy, its light filling the station with a faint orange glow. She would rest her hands on her stomach and speak softly. She told her child stories about her people, about the forests of her home world, about the rivers that sang, about the skies that shone with silver light. She wanted the little one to know beauty, even if they would never see it. But there was always a shadow in her heart. Would the child survive in this place? Could she raise them? With no help, no community, and no safety? She had no answers, only the will to try. Sometimes she wondered if anyone would ever come. The station was forgotten, left to drift in silence. Ships rarely passed this system. If someone did find her, would they show mercy? Or would they finish what her people had started? The silence pressed heavy on her, but Sirella held herself tall. She was old, yes, but she was not weak. She had survived banishment, fear, and loneliness. She would survive this as well. She whispered again to her child, her voice steady even as her eyes grew wet. "We are alone, but we will not be broken. As long as I breathe, you will live." The dying star burned outside, steady but fading just like her. And in that forgotten orbit, far from the world that had cast her out, Sirella waited. She waited for life, for hope, for something more than exile. She did not yet know that her wait would soon end. The silence of the space station had become Sirella's constant companion. Day after day, the only sounds she heard were the hum of old machines and the soft echo of her own footsteps on the metal floor. She had grown used to it, almost believing no other voice would ever reach her ears again. But one day, something changed. While checking the station's sensor console, a device she had only partly learned to read, Sirella noticed a faint signal. At first she thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the machine. The screen was full of static and broken lines. But the signal returned, stronger this time, showing movement near the edge of the system. Her heart raced. Could it be her people coming back to end what they had started? Or maybe a group of scavengers hunting for forgotten metal and fuel? Whoever it was, they were approaching. Sirella rushed to the window, staring out into the endless dark. At first, she saw nothing. Then slowly a small light appeared against the black sea of stars. It grew brighter, larger. It was a ship. Fear filled her. She was alone, old, and unarmed. If the newcomers wished her harm, she would have no way to resist. Her hands trembled as she pressed them against her stomach, whispering softly to the child within, "Stay calm, little one. I will protect you." The ship came closer until it latched onto the docking ring of the station. The sound echoed through the metal walls, a deep, heavy thud, followed by the hiss of airlocks connecting. Sirella stood frozen in the corridor, staring at the sealed hatch. Then the door opened. Out stepped a tall figure in a worn suit, carrying a large pack over one shoulder. The figure moved with confidence, not fear, as though stepping into a place long forgotten did not trouble him. His helmet clicked open, and Cirella saw a face she had never seen before. It was human. The man had strong features, lines on his face that spoke of many years in space. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. He looked at her with surprise but not with the disgust or judgment her own people had shown. "Didn't expect to find anyone alive here," he said, his voice calm. "Name's Elias Ward, commander of the Dauntless. And you are?" Cirella opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. She had prepared herself for enemies, not for someone who spoke gently. Finally, she managed to say, "I am Cirella." Her voice shook, unused to speaking to another living being after so long. Elias looked around the corridor, his brow furrowing at the flickering lights and the cracked walls. "This place looks ready to fall apart. How long have you been here?" "Many cycles," she answered softly. "It is my exile." Something flickered in his eyes. He did not ask why she had been cast out. He did not demand to know her crime. Instead, he simply nodded. "Then I suppose you've been surviving on your own. Impressive." No one had ever called her impressive before. Her people had called her foolish, selfish, a disgrace. The simple word filled her with warmth, though she did not show it. Elias put his pack down and opened it. Inside were tools, food rations, and containers of water. He began unpacking them as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Station's power grid looks unstable. I can help fix that. Air recycler, too. No one should live with systems this weak." Cirella watched him carefully. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." The human shrugged. "Because you're here and you're alive, that's enough." His words felt strange to her, almost unbelievable. Her people had measured worth in strict laws, traditions, and duties. This man measured worth in something far simpler: existence itself. As the hours passed, Elias worked on the machines, pulling wires, replacing parts, and humming softly to himself. Cirella stayed near, watching, learning. He explained things as he went, even though she told him she did not understand. "You will," he said with a grin. "Machines may look complicated, but they all follow simple rules, just like people." For the first time in many cycles, Cirella laughed. It was a quiet, shaky laugh, but real. Later, when they shared food from his rations, Elias noticed her, hand resting on her stomach. His eyes softened. "You're carrying a child," he said gently. Cirella tensed, waiting for judgment. But none came. "Yes," she whispered. "That is why I was sent here. My people. They do not accept it." Elias shook his head slowly. "Strange. Where I come from, a child is always a reason to fight harder, to survive longer. Doesn't matter how old you are. Life is life." Tears filled her eyes, though she turned her face away so he would not see. No one had ever spoken of her child with such respect. In that moment, the silence of the station felt lighter, as though a new kind of air had entered with this human. Life inside the forgotten space station slowly began to change after the arrival of Elias. What had once been only silence and broken machines now carried new sounds: the tapping of tools, the hum of repaired systems, and sometimes even the sound of laughter. For the first time in many cycles, Cirella did not feel like a ghost drifting through empty halls. Elias worked tirelessly, moving through the station with a confidence that amazed her. Where she had seen only ruin, he saw possibility. A broken panel became something to fix. A leaking pipe became a problem with a solution. He never complained about the effort or the danger. Instead, he smiled often and explained everything he did as if teaching her was as important as the repairs themselves. "You see this wire?" he said one day, holding up a small cable. "It carries power, but if the connection is loose, the whole system suffers. People are the same. Alone they weaken. Together they stay strong." Cirella listened carefully. His words carried simple truths that her people would have ignored. They lived by tradition, not by change. But this human seemed to believe that change was strength, not weakness. She began to learn from him. At first her hands fumbled with the tools, too heavy and clumsy, but Elias was patient. He guided her slowly, letting her try again and again, until she succeeded. The first time she managed to repair a broken light on her own, she felt a pride she had not felt since before her exile. "You did it," Elias said with a grin. "See, told you machines are simple once you know their rhythm." She smiled back, though softly, unused to showing joy. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps I can still learn, even at my age." "Of course you can," Elias replied. "Age doesn't stop learning. It only makes it more valuable." Those words stayed with her. They felt like a gentle light in her heart, one she had long thought extinguished. As days passed into weeks, their bond grew stronger. They shared meals together, often, laughing at the strange differences between their foods. Elias showed her dried human rations, which she found tasteless but filling, while she prepared small portions of alien roots she had saved. They joked about who had the worst meal, and sometimes Elias pretended to choke dramatically, making her laugh until her eyes watered. Yet it was not only laughter they shared. There were also quiet moments filled with meaning. At night they sat near the wide window that looked out at the dying star. Its fading red light filled the room, casting long shadows. Cirella would rest her hand on her stomach, and Elias would sit beside her in silence, respecting the moment without words. One evening as they sat there, Cirella whispered, "I do not know if this child will survive here. The station is old. I am old. It feels impossible." Elias looked at her firmly. "Impossible doesn't mean hopeless. If the little one comes early, we'll fight for them. Together." His confidence calmed her more than any machine or repair ever could. The day came sooner than she expected. It began with pain. Sharp, sudden, and stronger than anything she had felt before. She cried out, clutching her stomach as her legs grew weak. Elias rushed to her side, guiding her gently to a small room he had prepared as living quarters. "It's time," he said firmly, though his eyes showed worry. The birth was difficult. The station's weak air and cold walls made it harder, and Cirella's strength was fading fast. She felt as though the whole universe pressed down on her, crushing her breath. More than once she thought she might not make it, but Elias never left her side. He worked quickly, using his knowledge of human medicine to guide her through the pain. He adjusted the air system to give her more oxygen, used heat pads to keep her body warm, and spoke to her constantly, never letting her feel alone. "Breathe, Cirella. You're strong, stronger than you know. Hold on." His words became an anchor, pulling her back each time she felt herself slipping away. At last, after long and painful hours, a small cry filled the room. The sound was weak, but alive. Elias carefully wrapped the newborn in a soft cloth from his pack and placed the child into Cirella's trembling arms. She stared down at the tiny face, her eyes filled with tears. The child's skin glowed faintly, carrying the traits of her people, yet the cry, the breath, the warmth, it was universal. It was life. Cirella whispered softly, her voice shaking. "You live, my child. You live." Elias smiled, exhaustion in his eyes but relief on his face. "Told you. Together, we can make the impossible possible." For the first time since her exile, Cirella felt something powerful rise within her. It was not fear, not sorrow, but hope. The station was still broken, the universe still dangerous, but she was no longer alone. She had her child. And she had this human, who refused to judge her, who refused to leave her, who refused to give up. As she held her newborn close, Cirella knew the truth. Her people had abandoned her, but fate had brought her something greater. A friend, a protector, perhaps even a future. For weeks, Cirella and Elias had settled into a rhythm. The station, though old and fragile, had become a home. Machines hummed. Steadily the air was breathable, and the little child named Leora had begun to grow stronger with each passing day. For the first time, Cirella dared to imagine a future beyond exile, a future filled with life rather than fear. But peace was fragile. One quiet orbit, the station's alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the walls and the hum of machinery seemed to grow louder in panic. Cirella's heart leapt into her throat. She ran to the control console with Elias right behind her. "Sensors detect multiple approaching ships," he said calmly, though his eyes narrowed. "They're military class, and they're coming fast." Cirella's stomach sank. Her people, the ones who had exiled her, were returning. She had hoped they had forgotten her, that her exile would be ignored, but now it seemed they would not allow her freedom or her child's life. "They will take me," she whispered, voice shaking. "They will take the child too." Elias shook his head. "Not if we stop them. We have to prepare. Fast." Though the station was old, Elias saw potential where others would see only ruin. Broken energy cores became barriers. Rusted doors were reinforced with metal panels. Systems that had been silent for decades were restarted and rewired. Cirella, though anxious, worked beside him, following his instructions and adding her alien knowledge of energy fields to the repairs. "It's not just the machines," she said, frowning at a panel. "They know the weaknesses of this station. They will not be easy to stop." Elias smiled, though it was a tense one. "Neither are we. That's the point." Hours passed like minutes as they worked together. Leora slept peacefully in a small cradle, unaware of the danger outside. Cirella kept glancing at her child, feeling both fear and determination. She could not let anything happen to her. Not now. Not ever. Finally, the first ships appeared in view. Their sleek silver hulls glinted in the faint light of the dying star. Cirella recognized the symbols instantly. They belonged to her people, the same who had cast her out. Their intention was clear: retrieve her and punish what they considered a crime. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. "We can do this. Together." Cirella nodded, steeling herself. For the first time in many cycles, she realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. As the enemy ships drew closer, Elias activated the station's defenses. Old laser turrets, barely functional, hummed to life. Hidden energy fields shimmered around the outer walls, powered by Cirella's adjustments. When the first ships fired, the defenses held. Beams of light struck the attackers, forcing them to retreat slightly. Cirella's heart pounded. She watched as the small station held against the much larger fleet. She could not believe it. It was human ingenuity and determination that made this possible. Elias moved quickly, running between consoles, rerouting power and guiding her every step. "They won't give up easily," he warned. "But neither will we." Cirella remembered the words she had whispered to Leora. "We are alone, but we will not be broken." She now understood them fully. Alone? Perhaps. Broken? Never. The battle continued. Each wave of enemy fire met with clever traps and improvised defenses. Broken panels were rigged to explode in controlled bursts, slowing the attackers. Defunct satellites were reactivated to create a barrier. Each action required courage, skill, and trust between Cirella and Elias. And Leora slept through it all, her small form a reminder of why they fought. Hours passed. The enemy fleet, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, began to retreat. Cirella watched as the last ship disappeared into the darkness. The station trembled and groaned, but it had survived. She turned to Elias, eyes wide with relief and gratitude. You saved us," she whispered. He shook his head. "We saved each other. You are stronger than you think. And your child? She is going to grow up knowing that courage can be found anywhere, even here, in the middle of nowhere." Cirella smiled, a tired but genuine smile. The threat was gone for now, but the lesson was clear. Humanity's strength was not only in their machines or weapons, it was in their refusal to give up, in their loyalty, and in their courage to act when others would flee. For the first time, Cirella felt a spark of something more than survival. She felt hope. She held Leora close, whispering softly to her child. "We are safe, little one. And one day, you will know that the universe is not only full of danger, but also of those who will fight for you, even when all seems lost." Elias watched them, leaning against a console, and for the first time in cycles, Cirella allowed herself to rest. The battle was over, but the journey had only begun. Together, they had proven that even the smallest station, with the oldest mother and the bravest human, could stand against impossible odds. And somewhere deep in her heart, Cirella knew that her people's judgment no longer mattered. She had found a new family, a new strength, and a new reason to live. Humanity had given her something she had thought she would never feel again: safety, companionship, and hope. The stars outside the station seemed brighter that night, and for the first time in many cycles, Cirella believed that even in exile, life could be beautiful. After the battle, the station was quiet again. The alarms were silent, the flickering lights steadied, and the hum of the machines was calm. Cirella held Leora close, feeling the steady heartbeat of her child against her chest. Elias worked quietly at a control panel, repairing the minor damage from the attacks. Though exhausted, he never stopped, never complained. Cirella watched him for a moment and realized something important. This human, who had arrived as a stranger, had become her protector, her friend, and her companion. She had expected only judgment, only exile, only loneliness. Instead, she had found loyalty and courage. "Elias," she said softly, "why did you stay? You could have left when the fighting started. You could have gone back to your ship." Elias looked up, a small smile on his face. "Because you needed help, and because I believe life is valuable, no matter the species, no matter the age. You and Leora, you deserve to live. I couldn't turn away." Cirella's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever shown her such care. Her people had cast her aside for breaking a rule. They had called her foolish for having a child late in life. But this human, he had acted without judgment. He had seen her as she was, not as her society claimed she should be. Days turned into weeks. Together, Cirella and Elias repaired the station more fully than ever before. Broken systems became functional. Rooms were cleaned and organized. Small gardens of alien plants began to grow under the artificial lights. Leora laughed and reached for the glowing leaves, her curiosity bright and pure. The moment felt peaceful, almost as if the station itself had breathed a sigh of relief. But Cirella knew that peace would not last forever. Her people had sent their fleet before. Others might come if word spread. One evening, as the red light of the dying star washed across the walls, Elias sat beside her and spoke softly. "You don't have to stay here forever. There's a place for you with my people, with humans. A place where age is not a crime, where children are always welcome." Cirella's hand went to Leora's tiny head. She had dreamed of a life beyond exile for her child, but had never dared to imagine it for herself. "Leave and be accepted?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes," Elias said firmly. "You've already survived the impossible. You've shown courage, strength, and love. Here those things are celebrated, not punished. You can come with us. You can have a home." Cirella closed her eyes, imagining such a life. A place where she would not be judged, where Leora could grow safely, where she could finally be free. She thought of the endless silence of the station, of the fear she had felt when alone, and then of Elias, who had taught her hope again. She opened her eyes, feeling something she had not felt in centuries: trust. "Then, we will go," she said, holding her child tightly. "We will leave this place and try a new life." The preparations were simple but meaningful. Elias secured the station's systems, ensuring it could continue functioning without them. Cirella packed a few personal items, treasures from her home planet that she could not leave behind. Leora giggled. reaching for the lights and blinking panels, unaware of the journey ahead. As they boarded the human ship, Sorella felt a mixture of fear and excitement. She was leaving behind the only home she had known in exile, but she was gaining something far greater: safety, companionship, and the chance for a future. The stars stretched endlessly before them as the ship moved away from the station. Sorella watched the fading red glow of the dying star and whispered, "Goodbye, exile. You no longer define us." Elias glanced at her and smiled. "Welcome to the beginning of something new." Leora stirred in her arms, cooing softly, a tiny voice full of life and promise. Sorella held her closer, feeling the warmth and the hope she had fought so hard to protect. She knew that the universe could still be dangerous, but she also knew that with courage, loyalty, and love, they could face anything. Sorella thought of her people who had judged her so harshly. She no longer felt anger. Instead, she felt clarity, the strength of life, the power of compassion, and the value of choice. These were not dictated by tradition or rules. They were universal. They were the true measure of existence. For the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to smile freely. The exile was over, her child was safe, and she had found a human who saw her worth, who had offered not only protection but also the gift of hope. As the ship sailed through the stars, Sorella whispered to Leora once more, "We are not alone anymore. We have each other, and together, we will shine brighter than any star." Outside, the galaxy stretched in endless possibility, and for the first time Sorella believed that even a life that began in exile could end in joy, acceptance, and love.